semiconductors. And beyond that, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this Washington Space State Summit. Over the next hour, you can look forward to hearing from our panel of leaders in business, in research, and in education on the importance of growing the space sector in Washington State and what actions we can all take to make sure it continues to thrive. We'll hear opening remarks from Senator Cantwell and from NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, followed by short 2-minute introductions from each member of the panel. And I apologize in advance to the panelists, and I'm going to try to watch that time like a hawk. You'll see me waving at you. And the only reason is I want to hear more from you, but I also want to make sure that we have time to do a round of questions from myself, from Senator Cantwell, from Administrator Nelson, and also from members of the audience. And as a quick programming note, we will ask members of the press and the media to hold their questions here. We'll have a separate opportunity for questions directly after this. So please settle in for about 75 minutes, I said 60 before, 75 minutes of what I hope will be a really engaging and informative discussion on building the future right here in Washington. So with that, I'll turn it over to Senator Cantwell to open the event with her remarks.
Well, thank you, Richard Dwayne. Wow, this is what happens when you're in a space tech facility. All the technology works. This is great. You don't have to worry. They did all the dry runs. Well, first of all, thank you to Bob Smith, the CEO of Blue Origin, for hosting us here today. Thank you for that, and thank you to everybody for participating in the showing of what is great technology here in Washington. I want to welcome NASA Administrator Bill Nelson to this part of Washington and to thank him for not only his leadership at NASA, but his continued focus in making sure that our country maintains our leadership. We're here today to discuss how our state and our country stays ahead in space. Just over 11 years ago, the Seattle Times published an article with a headline that said, quote, "What would it take to become the Silicon Valley of space?" The Puget Sound area already had been known for leadership in aviation, but it was probably the first time a major newspaper associated the phrase, quote, "Silicon Valley of space" with Seattle, and asked how Seattle could become a leader in space innovation and entrepreneurship. The author, just so you know, it's not Dominic, okay, but anyway, the author had two major concerns. The Seattle faced tough competition from communities across the United States, and that American leadership in space overall was drifting. What a difference, though, 11 years makes. And we can see here today that many companies in the state of Washington are providing growth and opportunity for space jobs. It's providing a booming economy, and it has helped maintain America's position in leadership of space exploration. So I want to thank everybody for that. Our more than 100 space companies are innovating in satellite manufacturing, design of new rockets, solving everyday problems from the moon to Mars, and that innovation will also help us with aerospace in general. The facts are clear. Our space cluster is growing fast. In 2022, the Puget Sound region released a report that showed Washington's space industry had more than doubled in 4 years to $4.6 billion and had over 13,000 jobs. These workers are going to help NASA's Artemis mission deliver. And we are going to send the first woman to the moon, and we're going to get to Mars. Again, I want to thank Administrator Nelson for coming to see all of this, to see Blue Origin, Aerojet, Rocketdyne, Boeing, and many other of the Artemis contributors. Blue Origin's lunar lander alone will generate more than 1,000 jobs, and more than 40% of the satellites directly above our planet are made right here in Washington as well. And companies like SpaceX and Amazon's Kuiper, who we just saw a demonstration from, these satellite companies plan to increase production to more than 50 satellites a week. That's and high-speed broadband connectivity around the globe. So these investments in new materials and manufacturing will help us produce more aircraft, train new people at our universities and technical colleges, and continue to make investments. So even though there are 1,000 current openings for space jobs right here in Washington State, these are jobs from software developers to engineers to welders to machinists, and some of those jobs average over $100,000 a year and don't require a 4-year degree. So the question is, what do we need to do to continue to make ourselves more competitive? From machining to material science, we must increase and support manufacturing technologies like high-rate composite manufacturing and train and skill the technical workers to fill these jobs so that people can continue to help us meet this competition from a national level. Today's jobs and tomorrow's futures jobs are going to depend on the manufacturing sector assembled here today. And that is why I encourage the Department of Commerce and NASA to create a new manufacturing institute here in the Pacific Northwest. I was happy to hear NASA Administrator say in May he's been working on that recommendation, that he has been working with the executive branch on that concept, and to make sure that we stay competitive in the next generation thermoplastics high-rate composites. I will obviously be asking the panelists more about this and how our universities and community colleges can work together, and places like Snow Isle Technical Training and Gravitas, Starfish, all these people who are creating new jobs, what we can do to get the workforce. When we put the CHIPS and Science Act together, we also made a $250 billion investment into STEM education. I'm hoping this education can be used to educate and train people in this area, and that it will help us complete our Mars mission. So I, again, hope that we can talk to people today about these innovations, about the workforce of tomorrow, and how we can help the supply chain by not only just building for aerospace, but building for space too. Thank you very, very much. And let me thank my staff for putting on a fabulous program today, and everybody for participating.
Administrator Nelson.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for what you've done, the hard work here in setting up all these exhibits. Maria and I visited each one, and I've learned a lot. So thank you very, very much. You need to know that Maria and I sat next to each other for 2 decades on the Commerce Committee. She used to tell me what to do then, and she still tells me what to do now. So when she said, we're going to have this manufacturing institute, I said, yes, ma'am. It's needed. It's needed with the global competition that's going on. It's needed that we take our ingenuity as Americans, our creativity, and we apply this to the things that we need to be better at. And it is one of those institutes that would certainly benefit our country, and ultimately in the development of technology, it'll benefit the world. It'll specifically also benefit the state of Washington. Now you take, Maria said a little over a decade ago, what a difference a decade and a half made. The two of us had the privilege of having something to do with that because of the landmark NASA authorization bill. Also a Texas Republican Senator, Kay Bailey Hutchinson, who, by the way, I now have on the NASA Advisory Council. And we passed the blueprint, the roadmap for where NASA was going in the future. And you're seeing the results of that as evidenced right here in these exhibits today. Because we said going forward, NASA was going to bring commercial partners. We were going to have a substantial increase in a grant program with industry and with academia, and that as we go forward, and since we're going back to the moon after a half a century, we're not going back just to go, we're going in order to learn, to live, to work, to invent, to create, in order to go to Mars and beyond. And so we do so now with commercial partners. Blue Origin is a good example, along with SpaceX. They're developing the 2 landers for us. We're going to take them, the crew, in our Orion spacecraft on the big rocket that we've already had the test flight on, and it was just extraordinarily successful. We're going to go into lunar orbit, and then they're going to transfer into the initial flights. Will be 2 of the crew of 4 will transfer into the lander, and that will be the first woman and the next man that will walk on the surface of the moon. And this will go on for years and years. So it's a commercial partnership. Remember, last time we went to the moon, it was US government. This time it's a commercial partnership. It's also an international partnership. You will see that NASA is a hot commodity in the nations around the globe because these countries' governments want to work with us. And so for our United States foreign policy, NASA has become quite an instrument of soft power in our foreign policy. The first flight to the moon will be next year. 4 astronauts, 3 Americans and a Canadian. I'm dressed like this, save for my jeans, which Maria told me I couldn't wear jeans here today, because tomorrow I'm going to the biggest rodeo in the world, Calgary, Alberta, the Stampede, and I'm joining the Canadian astronaut that's going to the moon. He's going to be the Grand Marshal of the Stampede Parade. And this is the excitement of the future that we have going forward. It's the excitement of all these exhibits here also. It's the excitement of what the universities and the community colleges. And I said to the community colleges, crank them out, because a lot of these startup industries can't get enough employees. And then they have to compete with the big boys on wage scales. All of this is happening right here in the state of Washington. There are 4,622 jobs as a result in Washington of the economic impact resulting from NASA contracts in the state of Washington worth $427 million. That's right now. And according to Citi, the commercial space industry is on its way worldwide, reaching $1 trillion in annual revenue by 2040. So that's where we're going. So you all are at the cusp of this, and it's happening in front of our very eyes. And I might say that thanks to the quality of your leadership, and by the way, I want to welcome the mayor and also the president of the city council, because of the quality of your leadership, your governor, Jay Inslee, the senior senator, Patty Murray, and especially Maria, as she works on these issues. proof's in the pudding. And the proof is right here. So thank you all for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Administrator Nelson. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our panelists. So we are going to ping pong a little bit around the table today, but I'd like to start off with some of our industry representatives to speak about the work that they're doing here in Washington. So I'll start off, I'll turn it over to our gracious host, CEO Bob Smith of Blue Origin.
Good morning. How's everybody today? Welcome to Blue. So glad to have you here. It's a great day to be a host to Senator Cantwell and Senator Nelson. We are very honored to have you here. But I think one of the things that I love about this particular event is that it's representative of what we do. So there's almost a drinking game about how we talk about our vision all the time, right? Which is a million people living and working in space for the benefit of Earth. We say that all the time. The reason why we say it because it reminds us what our North Star is. It reminds us what we're trying to go do, which is trying to get the entire of humanity into space so that we can relieve what we're doing to this planet. That's incredibly important to us. But the reason why it's so important to us to have these type of events, because it's also representative of what we're trying to go do overall, which is we don't want to do this in the same way that's been done before. We want to bring everyone into space. We want this to be a very diverse workforce. We want it to be an inclusive one where everybody feels that they're here. So as we've grown over the past 5 years from an 800-person workforce when I joined to now over 10,000 people, we've kept that first and foremost. People with different backgrounds, different skills, different overall capabilities around that. So that's point one. That's why this is important. Secondly, it's why we actually talk about another generation. That's why we have Club for the Future. Some of you may have seen the display here, where we talk about Club for the Future, because we know this vision is so bold and so grand that it's going to take more than one generation to do this. It's going to be our children and our grandchildren that are actually going to see this happen. And that's why we spend, and every employee at Blue Origin is an ambassador for Club for the Future. And we say, this is part of your job. This is part of who we are, is for you to promote another generation. And then, we love this type of event. When this was proposed by Senator Cantwell, we're like, yes, of course we're in. We want an aerospace summit for Washington because we know it's going to take lots of companies. We're rooting for everybody to succeed because it's going to take lots of companies, not just Blue Origin, but we want all the companies to do this. We want it to be done well around the globe, but particularly here in the United States, so we can maintain that competitiveness. And also, we found such a great state for us to have our headquarters in because we get the kind of support that we need. Because one thing I always like to remind people is that great government actually begets great business. It doesn't work the other way. The only way that you actually have great commerce, have great societies, you have a dynamic, innovative society, is if you have great government. If you want to look at counter examples, look at Russia. It's a kleptocracy. You can look at other places where there's incredibly corrupt practices in all their commerce. But we have the great benefit of great courts, great governments, great senators, great administrators that all allow commerce and innovation to happen. And that's why we're so excited to have this. And that's the only thing I will continue to say about Washington is just never forget that we're always in a race. This is always a competition around the world. And we have to out-innovate and make sure that government and industry work together to do all that. So I won't be any more long-winded than that. Let's say thank you and welcome. So glad you could all be here. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much. Now I'll turn over the next 2 minutes to Andy Lapsa, CEO of Stowe Space.
Well, first of all, thank you, Senator Cantwell and Administrator Nelson, and thank you, Bob and Blue Origin, for hosting this event. It's an amazing time to be part of our industry. It's truly a renaissance period. But I also want to think holistically about our place in history. It's really just the very beginning for our industry to take off. If you think about us and where we are in the context of other forms of mobility and commerce, we're remarkably primitive. Our ability to send things from Earth to orbit, move things around orbit, and bring them back down is incredibly slow, it's incredibly expensive, and frankly, it's unreliable. So, by comparison, we can ship anything from here to just about anywhere in the world in 2 days. And we can't even think about doing something close to that for space. So it is truly the very beginning for our industry, and that's what makes this moment so important and so exciting. We think about that, again, from a holistic perspective constantly at our company, Stoke. We think about how companies can get their products from factory to revenue as fast as possible, no matter where they need to go on orbit. We think about moving them around orbit and bringing them softly back on the Earth, or frankly, any other planetary body. That's what we set out to solve as a company. We built 100% reusable rockets designed to fly daily. We focused our early energy on solving the reusable second stage space vehicle problem. I personally think that that's the last big domino in our industry to fall in order to unlock the true capability of space commerce. And so that's where we focused early on. Our vehicle, the whole stack, has meaningful capacity to any orbit, has meaningful capacity to other planetary bodies, and has the ability to bring those things back down to Earth. Since we've founded, we've received over $100 million in financing. Virtually 100% of that financing stays right here in Washington State. We operate about 175,000 square feet of engineering and manufacturing space. We have built, in the last couple years, a state-of-the-art rocket engine test facility in Moses Lake, about 3 hours east of here. And we're very excited to continue to build our workforce. As a company, we've gone from seed funding to full-scale rocket engine testing faster than any company has ever done it. We've now fully demonstrated our very important piece of our tech stack, which is a fully reusable heat shield, which is integrated into our vehicle and can turn around very quickly. Importantly, it eliminates the need for very fragile ceramic tile thermal protection, such as what was used on the space shuttle. So this is one of our very key technical innovations. We've also become one of the only 6 companies in the US joining Blue Origin to operate a launch complex down in Cape Canaveral. We have dedicated use of Launch Complex 14 down in Cape Canaveral. And so we'll continue to scale, obviously, our engineering and our manufacturing and our testing here as we build down in Cape Canaveral. So again, thank you for hosting the event. It's wonderful to be here and look forward to the discussion.
All right, thank you so much. The next 2 minutes to Austin Link, co-founder of Starfish Space.
Thank you, Richard. Hello, everybody. I'm Austin, and I'm one of 2 co-founders of a company called Starfish Space. And before that, I worked here at Blue Origin, so this is really exciting to be back today. I have my blue socks on, which doesn't work because nobody can see them. But I want to say thank you to Blue Origin for hosting and for long ago hiring me once. At Starfish Space, we are building a satellite that we call the Otter. It's designed to grab and move other objects in space. This is really initially useful for 2 missions that we focus on. One is to help extend the life of large satellites so they can continue to operate and provide value. And the other is to dispose of space debris, specifically dead satellites, in particular in low Earth orbit. We are really on the leading edge, as Andy talked about, this is the early days for us as an industry. We're on the leading edges of seeing a new wave of satellites in orbit. And thousands of satellites are being launched a year, and that changes space from a realm that was kind of open and space free from a problem that maybe made a good Sandra Bullock movie to one that's really threatening billions of dollars in infrastructure that we're putting up on orbit. And so we see our role as Starfish to help dispose of satellites at the end of their life and ensure that we can continue to use space to provide value to folks back here on Earth. We are in still relatively early stages of doing that. We as a company have about 40 folks. We've raised $23 million in venture capital. We have contracts with NASA, the Air Force, the Space Force, Defense Innovation Unit. We are all located just up the road in Tukwila, so we can walk to the South Center Mall for lunch. We, as of 3 weeks ago, just launched our first satellite to orbit, which we call the Otter Pup. And it's designed to go up there and at least attempt to dock with another satellite on orbit. Now, it's been an adventure so far, which keeps things fun. That's part of the space industry. You get tremendously challenging problems and you get to try to tackle them. And what I'm really excited about with the Otter Pup, with the Otter, and what goes beyond that is its potential not just for immediate missions, but if you can reliably and regularly go up to another object in space and interact with it, it creates an entirely new dynamic way to do missions in space. And someday we'll be launching up the next version of the James Webb Space Telescope. And it won't be $8 billion with 300 single point failures folded into a single launch vehicle. We'll send it up in 100 different parts, and it will be bigger and better and more affordable and more reliable than we could ever do. And that's going to start with the ability to interact with these objects and put them together and dock with them. And how am I getting a phone call right now? That's wonderful. Oh, that's you. You're telling me my 2 minutes are up. That's sneaky, Richard. But with that, I'll say thank you to everybody again for being here, for listening to me waste 2 minutes, and I'll turn it back to you.
It's time well spent. Thank you so much. All right, next we'll hear from Colin Dawn, CEO of Gravitics. Your 2 minutes.
Hello everyone, thank you so much. Gravitics, we are building large spaces for space, large volumes. You know, to hear Administrator Nelson, you talk about that vision for space. The part that gets everyone excited is that Canadian astronaut, the first woman landing on the moon. It's the people. And Gravitics believes in extending human flourishing throughout the entire solar system. Large volumes, built like Lego bricks to make it easy for space stations to scale as commercial interest requires it, is really what we're all about. And we are located just north of Seattle in Marysville. We've got 50 people there, and Washington has been absolutely fabulous for us. That vision 10 years ago in the making was absolutely the reason we came. The workforce is here, the innovation is here. We are excited about onshoring that manufacturing capability that right now largely lives in Europe and in Italy, right here in the US, so that that next wave of human-inspired excitement for space development happens right here in the US. So we are excited to be a part of this panel, excited to be a part of this next wave of commercialization, and we see Washington and the US as that innovator that is going to open up the final frontier for all of humanity. Thank you.
So, I believe we heard in Senator Cantwell's opening remarks that Washington is solving every problem from here to the moon. And I think we just heard, we're landing people on the moon, we're making our rockets reusable, we're cleaning up space, and we're bringing back manufacturing. So it was a great thing to hear from our industry partners. I'd like to turn it over now to some of our educators, and we'll start off with Dean Jihui Yan from University of Washington.
Thank you very much. I'm extremely proud to be here. University of Washington has been in the space community for a long time. So our first priority is workforce education. I agree with the theme of it's about people. We're a proud home for NASA's space grant, which the role is to promote opportunity for students who are interested in the space industry. And about 2 years ago, we have allocated additional faculty lines, cluster hiring faculty lines in the area of space engineering and system. We've been a long member of research community in the state of Washington. For example, we are the home for FAA, I think Senator Cantwell was a champion for this, about 2 decades ago. We are the home for FAA's Center of Excellence for Advanced Materials in Transport Aircraft Structure. We're also managing the Washington Joint Center for Advanced Space Innovation. And we also have materials research centers for advanced composite. We have been working with many industry partners, including Boeing. We have a Boeing Advanced Research Center at the University of Washington. So we're committed to continuing to work with this community, both in terms of future workforce education and research, to develop the technology to produce the workforce necessary for us to go to the moon, the Mars, and beyond. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dean Wang. I'll now recognize Dean Mary Rezac from Washington State University.
Good morning. I'm Mary Rezac, Dean of the Boylan College of Engineering and Architecture at Washington State University. My college produces more than 1,200 new STEM graduates annually, contributing to every sector of the Washington economy. Blue Origin alone has hired hundreds of WSU graduates in the past decade, and we've had the opportunity to meet with several of them this morning, so go Cougs. While our numbers have grown dramatically since the Great Recession, we recognize that our workforce efforts are insufficient to meet demand. The Washington Roundtable estimates that less than 50% of the new STEM jobs in the state could be filled by in-state graduates. Furthermore, with expansions in the space industry, microelectronics, and other sectors, we expect to see tens of thousands of new STEM jobs here in Washington in the next decade. To ensure the continued growth of our economy, we must work together to attract, train, and place new STEM graduates. We're addressing this challenge on multiple fronts. First, we've partnered with the state's community and technical colleges to ensure that students can begin their education close to home, be confident that their courses will transfer, and then complete their degrees at one of the 5 WSU campuses around the state. Second, we're really focused on maximizing retention and graduation rates of a very diverse population of students. Using evidence-based practices, we've created supportive communities of learning that have seen first-year retention rates average more than 97% over the past 4 years, including during the pandemic, which was a really crazy time for us. And finally, we've partnered with industry to ensure that what we teach and how we teach it ensures that our graduates are work-ready day one. Funding from NASA, other agencies, and industry propels our research forward. We've learned how to build better rockets, ensure cybersecurity of electronic communications, develop strong yet lightweight composites, and advanced technologies to address climate change, while simultaneously training the workforce of tomorrow. We're excited to continue to partner in this space and really look forward to today's conversation.
Thank you very much, Dean Rezac. And we'll close out with this portion with instructor Kareem Morales-Vincent from Snow Isle Tech.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate being here. I'm a little bit nervous to be sitting with all of these amazing, wonderful people that are ushering the next generation into the realm of space. We are all excited about this, especially my students. I teach at Snow Isle Tech Skills Center, right across the street from the Boeing plant in Everett. We start our students with exposure at the age of 13 once they leave middle school and start coming into the high school realm. We have our students for 2.5 hours each day, 2 different groups, exposing them to various courses of industry and pathways. We try to inundate them with the possibilities of our imaginations. We do not put caps on answers. Everything that they learn in aviation is related to everything else that they're going to see in aerospace. The wonderful thing about this field and the level that I teach at on the high school level is that we are opening up a world where they can make a wonderful living just by seizing their opportunities, meeting people, wanting to come in, learn the subject matter, but that is only half of it. We want to be able to turn out good people people that have compassion and empathy and want to make a real difference in this world. And I am so incredibly respectful of the industry that has embraced all of us and are making a path for students that are barely out of high school. And I appreciate all of you being here and shedding light on how we can make a difference to students who don't know exactly where they want to be. As a teenager, I never thought that this was a possibility. And if we're going to learn something, we're going to learn it from each other. So if we keep learning and we keep speaking to each other, more and more students at an earlier age will be involved in this very lucrative, not to mention sci-fi kind of future that we are embarking on. I do appreciate you having me here. Thank you very much for all of you, and I appreciate it.
I didn't see a hint of nervousness, so thank you for that. All right, moving on from our education groups who have really told us about creating new technologies and creating work-ready students, day one work-ready students, I'd like to hand it over to Nikki Malcolm, CEO and Executive Director of the Pacific Northwest Aerospace Alliance, which represents a lot of our supply chain in the state.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, Senator Cantwell and Administrator Nelson, for the opportunity to come and represent the manufacturing ecosystem here today. We see it as our responsibility to support the growth and global competitiveness of the aerospace region. And what that means for us in the context of space is ensuring that we're supporting the manufacturing ecosystem to stay up to speed with what all of these amazing companies are creating and have the production capacity and capabilities that you need to help you move forward and help you grow as companies. And so the way that we do that, for over 23 years we've been doing that and supporting through events and education, but we were able recently through an award through the state 2 years ago to deepen our initiatives and those commitments. And I'll speak specifically on the workforce and supply chain initiatives that we have through the Innovation Cluster Accelerator program that we're doing. We are going to be working to put out a website that really connects, called Aerospace Connect, to connect all of the different roles that are available in the industry. Myself, I came into the industry at a very young age and had no idea what the opportunities were. We intend to make that very clear to anybody that wants to pursue a career in the aerospace industry. And at the same time, we want to work with the aerospace supply chain to improve their modernization of their manufacturing facilities, to make sure that we have the capacity to improve those, not only from that, but also to attract the next generation and ensure that we have the right types of technologies in to do that and to support these companies in their growth.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our panel. So I have a series of questions ready to go, but I would like to pause for a second to see if either Administrator Nelson or Senator Cantwell would like to ask something.
Well, I want to present a photograph that has meaning to Maria and to Bob and to the mayor. And I'll give this to you later, but basically this is the Orion spacecraft taking a selfie photograph of itself at its farthest position from Earth. And in this selfie, in the background, is the moon, 40,000 miles away from the spacecraft. And then the Earth in the distance, the blue marble, 270,000 miles away. It's the farthest that a human-rated spacecraft has been. And so I've signed one of these photographs for each of the three of you, and I want you to have it.
That is absolutely breathtaking. Senator, is there something you want to...
I don't want to steal your thunder since
You pay my bill, Senator. Have as much of my thunder as you would like.
Well, we had a tour earlier, and it was great to see some of the challenges that Blue Origin is meeting. But one of the things that struck me when you were looking at the composite material that is being made, today really is about what is it that we need to do to stay competitive so that Administrator Nelson is successful at having the United States lead in space. And I was struck by something that you said, Bob, that you thought it was literally in the manufacturing rate of composites, that the science part was not the hard part was the manufacturing rate of composites, which is exactly what we've been thinking about in aerospace overall, that it's the same issue of if you're gonna have a transformation in the next generation of planes, and how do you produce high rate of composites? So what is that problem really about, and how do we solve it, and how could a manufacturing institute, how could that help that?
Well, I think that is one of the things that the aerospace industry as a whole undervalues, that manufacturing is the hard problem. We tend to focus on, I've been an aerospace professional my entire career, things going hard and fast, and wow, isn't that some great technology? But unless you can produce it and produce it at rate, it's nowhere close as being as valuable as that. So if you even think about what the aerospace industry, aircraft, spacecraft, even launch vehicles, the rate of production isn't very high. So we don't get rates of learning. We don't facilitize for those kinds of things. And I think one of the transformations I think this generation of space leadership is doing is saying, no, we have to figure out how to make automotive grade quality, because the aerospace quality rate is nowhere close to that. We inspect in quality. That's how we make sure it's safe. But we need to make sure that we can design it, we can produce it at rate, we can produce it at large scales. And I think one of the things that we need just in Washington State and across the country is focus on that manufacturing technology and focus on those investments, because that's one of the places that I think we in competitives around the world has actually lost a step. And I think the more that we can invest in the technologies, manufacturing technologies, and the skills that go behind that, and then incentivize really from regulatory and tax policy, environmental, et cetera, people investing in the facilities here in the United States, here in Washington State. The more we can do that, the more we're gonna actually blow everybody else away on the planet.
So Dean Rizak, do you have a response to that? And am I correct that the fact that the mission now defined by NASA, that we're not going back once, this isn't a one-time thing, this is about exploration for the future, has then increased the demand for this high rate of manufacturing, is that right?
That's exactly right. I mean, making things reusable, making things sustainable is that. I mean, it's like, fundamentally, if you actually talk about what happened with Apollo, you built up this incredible manufacturing and workforce space, and then it kind of went away. And some of it transitioned into the shuttle program, but it didn't sustain because we went to different systems, tools, et cetera. And so there's a lot of lessons to be doing about how do we actually do this consistently and do it at rate, so we can produce a number of other systems that we can build off of.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity to speak that out, and I would just say that my perspective is very, very similar to Mr. Smith's, that in order to reduce costs, one has to have some consistency in design. There has to be adaptability from one system to another, and you have to do it repetitively, right? So space to this point has really been one at a time, very focused, and if we want to take our engineering learning and reapply it, we have to look at the reusables, the recoverables, the continue to adapt and adjust, but an absolute continued focused on quality and safety, right? So we have to do all of those things at the same time. But if you look retrospectively at other great engineering achievements, that's happened, right? It happened in automobiles, it happened in communications, it's happened in really every segment that currently is operating at a low cost. But in order to maintain those continued advancements, I think you need for the workforce to help you do it, which I care a lot about, but you also need a continued market, right? There has to be a demand for this product continued over time, and at this point, in really all of those sectors, there was significant federal support for ensuring that those sectors move forward, and continued support over time is, I think, going to be critical to seeing these things happen.
I'd like to continue on that theme of continued federal support. I think, Bob, you said something that I really like, that good government enables great companies. So I'd love to hear from maybe Stoke or Gravitics about what other actions you would want the government to be taking in order to enable companies like yours, and your growth here in Washington, of course.
Yeah, so first of all, Washington has been a great place to set up shop. We did that consciously. Washington has an incredible nexus of established engineering talent, of industrial base, and then for us, very importantly, is software side, and I think there's no city in the world that's better suited for software development. So all three things come together here in Washington State, and that's why we decided to set up shop here. Maybe I can chime in also on the manufacturing side. I think one thing that I would comment on is in aerospace and space vehicles, we've been stuck in this world where we're manufacturing rate limited, where we build one-off bespoke vehicles that then typically get thrown away. And because of that, in order to get reliability up, we put a whole lot of effort into verification and certification. It's a huge amount of the cost. Reusability breaks that cycle. The second thing, and the thing that's related to manufacturing, is the idea of being able to iterate. It is very hard when you're building something like 10 vehicles in the Apollo program, 20 vehicles. It is very hard to get in a place where you can capitalize and get efficient production. And then the idea of iterating says, okay, now you have to go throw all that away and recapitalize. To Bob's point, when you look at automotive grade manufacturing, the reason they're able to do that is they make massive investments into production lines that pump out hundreds of thousands of units, and every 3 to 5 years they can afford to recapitalize. That doesn't exist in aerospace. So my point is that in manufacturing, it has to be a very conscious decision how you do the design from day one in order to iterate. If you look at automobiles, I think personally there's no modern marvel more incredible than a car, a modern day car. The fact, if you look at the technology that's packed into that you can buy for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, it's unbelievable. And the reason is it iterates at 3 to 5 year cycles. So how do you do that for aerospace? You do that by investing and designing intelligent for manufacturing so you can build quickly, right?
Thank you. I want to turn to maybe some of our educators. The statement was made about there are 1,000 jobs that have to be filled, and there's just such a need to get more students involved and interested. So I'm wondering if some of our educators on the panel can talk about what more we can do as government, what more as companies can do in order to increase those pathways for students to come into the sector. How about, yeah, you look like you wanted to go, Corinne, I could tell.
Thank you. So at a place like Snow Isle where I teach, we enable them to believe, and we give them the proof that they can go out into industry, have a living wage, and we can stop calling back our retirees. A lot of the people that I have worked with in the past have come back to the companies that they have retired from because of this lack and shortage of workers for the aviation and aerospace industry. When the students leave the high school, whether they go into college or they go into industry, I always advise them to befriend the oldest, the most senior, the people that are actually going to contribute positively to their lives industrially, so that that generation can go ahead and stay retired. We try to get to 67, 70 years old and we're so happy to be retired. I know at least 2 dozen that have retired on Friday and go back to work on Monday. Gratefully, we do have those people who will say yes to get us through. but we have to push these younger people into the realm of having the possibilities to hold these jobs where they can make a living wage as early as their 18th birthday. Many students don't know that that's an option for them. And COVID has taught us that a lot of our students have stepped up to be caregivers and actually bringing home a fair wage so they can help support their siblings and their parents. So information for these younger students is key, and we need to bring you guys into our schools to let them know this can be done. We do want you. Don't think about it. If you want to go into industry, there are people who are going to help you.
Thank you. So I believe we're about to shift into some audience questions. As that gets underway, maybe I'll direct one more question out there to Nikki. You represent both sides of the aerospace sector. I'm wondering if you could talk about what you're seeing, maybe the driving technologies of the future. What can we start inventing here? Oh, sorry.
And Richard Dwayne, if I could just add, and Nikki, so if the notion here is that space manufacturing is here, how does that help airplane manufacturing? And what do we do to keep the synergy between them going?
That's such a great question. And Bob, I love what you said about manufacturing and enabling it. And so there's so many similarities between traditional commercial aviation manufacturing and space. The first being quality, right? There's no question on whether it has to be the highest quality thing out there. So there's a lot of crossover in what we do and how they help. And I think that I use aerospace interchangeably, and I know some people like them to be separated, but I use it interchangeably because I think that there's such an amazing collaboration opportunity between the two, because we're making the same kind of parts. And quite frankly, a lot of times the machines don't care whether you're making space parts or commercial parts. So the collaboration both on propulsion sides and how we use energy, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to create synergies between the two of those, because a lot, especially composites manufacturing, utilizes a significant amount of power in autoclaves and things. So I think that if we found ways to collaborate even closer together, we'd find some of these automation things. When you're looking at how chips, I was recently in out-of-the-box manufacturing, and looking at how they utilize automation to make things quickly, like the automotive facilities, and trying to think, like, how do we bring that to aerospace manufacturing into this high-mix, low-volume space? How can we create automation from a place that doesn't benefit from the high iteration of automotive? And I think that we have the brain capacity in this room alone to find ways to do that. And that significantly benefits both commercial aviation and space.
All right, are we ready with the first audience question? I have more, so we can always keep going.
Right there.
Oh, fantastic, all right. Do we have a mic? All right, hold on. Oh, you got it, all right. Yeah, just let us know your name and go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Lena, and my question is, what are your plans to help kids in middle school get more interested in STEAM and space?
Who wants to take it?
If you want to get kids interested in space, I can tell you one way NASA does. We have an astronaut in a blue flight suit walk into the classroom, and you ought to see how their eyes light up. There is a fascination about spaceflight from the American people, but that's particularly so with children. And we saw, for example, the educational benefits that came out of the first time we went to the moon. For a couple of educational generations thereafter, we had new generations of engineers and technicians and mathematicians and scientists. And so too now with the Artemis generation, I think we're going to see a similar occurrence. As a matter of fact, NASA has a comic book, and it's geared to the grade level, and it's about a young woman who goes to the moon. It's just another means of trying to communicate. And so as we go back to the moon, watch what happens to getting students interested again all the more in the STEM, and we now change that to STEAM with the additional A being the arts. Look at the surge in numbers that you will see in the schools.
Okay, so I would add one